Welcome back to Dr. Introspect TV, and it's your host, Dr. Introspect, and I'm back. Alright, that's our intro, and I'm back at you with another podcast style video. Here I'm going to be analyzing the 5-season show that recently concluded this 2020 called Schitt. Stay tuned. Okay, so I have to say this is a show I really enjoyed. I had seen the season 1 previously, and then I jumped right back and saw 2 to 5 binge style, which is typically my favorite style. And fun fact, the show actually bagged 9 Emmys this year, so it was really exciting to see finishing that season and just thinking to myself, what do we do with our lives now? I think the last time I felt that way was when I saw How to Get Away with Murder, and I was almost close to tears really watching the end of this show. It ended so beautifully, and they did deserve those awards. Fun fact, this is a show I think that is so relatable. A lot of people watch this and either find themselves in the characters or find themselves in the themes. It is really so relatable, and it'll probably leave a void when it's done. So diving right in, this right here are the 4 main people I'm going to be spending a lot of the time talking about. So by all means, grab your popcorn, grab a chair, sit down, get really comfortable, because this is going to be a long one. So we're looking at the Rose family. We have Alexis and David, the children, and the parents, and of course Moira, my favorite character in this show. So background story, this family is essentially your rich family that goes from grace to grass, and this is a very familiar type of story because in real life we know a lot of celebrities or rich famous people, even athletes that have lost all their money and had to start over. We get to watch that on screen as this family tries to do that for 3 years, from season 1 to season 5. In their story, they're struggling for 3 years, right? But the show itself is 5 seasons. I just had to clear that up, and that's essentially what's going on here. So the father, Johnny Rose, he's your all-American dad, stereotypical. I personally see him as an ESTJ type man, but his TE is not so aggressive. For those familiar with MBTI typology, he's just, your father, typical provider type person. You have the mother that is basically very spotlighty. She likes the spotlight to be on her. She's always dressed in very exciting clothes. That's the adjective I have for her. And of course you have the children. I wouldn't say they're spoiled, but they are your typical rich kid type family that seem kind of vapid and on the surface. But of course, as the show proceeds, we get to see that they're all a lot more dimensions and depth to their character. And we watch them grow and evolve. A core theme in this show is the theme of growth, and I'm going to spend some time talking about it. There's also the theme of relationships and the parenting situation. As you know, I don't spend a lot of time commenting on the cinematography of shows or movies. I like to dwell on the human dynamics, and that's really what I'll be bringing to you here. So diving right into the parenting, looking at Moira Rose and Johnny Rose, it's kind of a hard issue to resolve really, because they are such a great couple. There is no denying the fact that they have love for each other and they love their kids. And then when you see that dynamic play out in the show, it's like, how did you guys get it so wrong? And I'm gonna just chalk it up to them putting their works and their careers before their children. And I hate to say it because that's bad parenting. If you're a parent, your kids come first, period. You decide to bring kids to this world, that's a decision you have to live by. That's a choice you have to consistently keep making. And it seems like there are so many things they were not there for with Alexis. You start hearing all kinds of things like her being in a weird country at the age of 12 or something, and the parents don't even know she's there. She doesn't get to finish high school. David as well has his own things. She doesn't get to finish high school, and she misses out on a lot of things, really. They don't grow up with that whole solid structure. Another thing I see is that they're missing this emotional component. So you see a lot in season 1, but it does get better as you're proceeding and you get to season 5, and you see that they are really lacking this emotional muscle. Moira Rose is not really she's not really the nurturing type mother. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being that way, but you can develop that skill in your children where they're comfortable with talking about their feelings and experiencing emotions. They're even weird with hugs, and that's something that you find the kids now only being able to explore now as adults, as they try to come to terms with their feelings. You see a lot with Alexis when she goes to talk to, she's always going to Twyla and sitting on her chair and basically trying to untie and untangle her emotions in a way that she hasn't actually really done before, and she gets better and better at this. You see that also with David. He typically does this with Stevie, and then later with his partner Patrick, as they try to navigate this whole emotional space. So that's something they were missing. Their parents weren't there, but obviously seeing how their parents are able to step right in and essentially have a do-over in this grass period of their life, it goes to show that if they had put in the effort, they would have done it and done it really well. And I'm not saying they were horrible parents. There was no abuse or anything like that, but this theme of their parenting is also something that people in their community tend to comment on. Like Jocelyn and her husband, they would be like, we don't know if we want to live our baby with you, because look what you did with your own children, so that's definitely something to say there. Now moving on to the theme of growth, I'm looking at the family. Alexis, I'm starting with Alexis really. So Alexis gets to get her first job. She's working at the veterinary clinic, and she is working there as a secretary for Ted, and she even gets to do an interview process. And just seeing her take on this first job, of course she wasn't your traditional secretary, but we could still see her shine in some areas. For example, the people skills, which she tends to do so well in a space like that at a medical facility. People will come in with their pets and they can be very emotional and distraught about the outcome, and she was able to calm them down and put them in better spirits. So she was shining in that capacity. She also got to finish her high school GED, take it, and then enroll in college to take business. Seeing her take those business classes and apply some of those concepts to David's business was really remarkable. And then she went on to start her own PR company, and she was personally managing her mom Moira. So that growth was just tremendous for Alex. Of course, relationship wise, there was also growth there. She learned how to be on her own. So she got to this town, she dated Ted, and then she broke up with Ted and she dated some other guy, and then she had to be on her own after breaking up with him for a while, and really understand that you don't get into relationships with people just because you don't want to be by yourself. Relationships are not for two half people to become whole. It's for two people that are whole and secure in themselves to now come together and enjoy the experience of love, together. So that was something she had to learn how to do, and that was a growth I had to make note of for her. Next up, we have David. For David, He got to experience an entrepreneurial vision. He started his own apothecary. He called Rose Apothecary. And for him, the challenge here was really that whole thing about independence. In the past, he had done gallery shows, and his mother had bought the paintings, and he didn't know that that wasn't really his own success. So finding out about this truth essentially made him question his own self-efficacy, and these kind of things can actually affect your own self-esteem. So you want to have self-confidence and self-esteem, and you can usually get that from actually doing something. You take a project, you take a task, you achieve stuff, and they build up, and then you can look back and see that, oh, I did this, I was able to do this, that means I can do more. And with his mother denying him that ability, even if he failed, you have to let your kids fail sometimes so they can pick themselves back up, they can learn from why they failed and come back better and stronger and things like that. So he didn't get to have that, and he was really pained and bitter about it, that his mother denied him the opportunity, and that kind of created issues of self-doubt for him, where when he did start this business, or when he was still trying to pursue the business, even up until starting to register the name, he second guessed himself a lot, because oh, I don't know if I can do this, but he fought through with the support of his partner Patrick, that turned out to be his partner for life as well, because they got married, and he was able to fulfill that vision. So I was really happy for him in that note. He really grew, and of course emotionally, relationship wise, he also grew as well. He was able to really explore his emotions and feelings. He would often go to his friend Stevie to do that, and he eventually started doing that with his partner Patrick as well, being able to be vulnerable. That was really tremendous growth for him, and that's something to note. Looking at the father, Johnny Rose, his own was basically about learning how to balance work and family, and trying to figure out what his identity is when it's separate from his work. So we saw that a lot here. Johnny did a great job. He created a successful business that eventually ran down to zero. But a lot of what it takes, besides guts, is to, really, really work hard. And it's, people say all the time, working hard brings success. And he definitely did that, and he got the success. But then you can see the situation it led to in his family. He wasn't really there, and he had to learn that, look, you're going to have to find a way to balance it. You're going to have to be there for your family, and then also try and balance it with your success. I think that's a lesson that's really relevant to a lot of people, no matter your age group, especially young people. We're at an age where we're using a lot of our energy to really, really bring forward the type of futures we want, but we don't want to, in the process, miss out on life, relationships, love, family, these kind of things. And even as he started with the business that he was in with Stevie, and he really started to put in those hours to try to make the business grow, he started to lose out of time with Moira. And I'm happy that Moira spoke up, because sometimes you're with your partner, you're starting to see that time is slipping away. You guys are not really putting each other first as you should, and then you swallow it, you keep quiet. But Moira didn't keep quiet, perhaps because they've done this before. They've been down that road and they've seen the outcome. And she said something like, I've missed you, we're supposed to have lunch together, brunch, coffee, whatever. And she brought it up, and like the great husband he is, he took note of it, and he made those changes. He recognized that he was starting to step into old shoes again, and he retraced his steps and came back together. So that was definitely something for him. And then his identity being tied to his job. So as a man, your role in society, you see yourself as not just a father but also a provider. when they had to go from grace to grass and start over, and he's not able to provide for his family in the way he felt he should. He felt like a failure, and not only did he feel like he was failing them, he felt like he was also losing himself. So for a lot of people, especially men, situations like this kind of crisis can be especially painful for them, because their job is how they found their identity as people. So him having to find out who he is when he's not a provider was his own growth. Then looking at Moira was the person that was having the greatest challenge with adjusting. She has been in the stardom as a performer, acting, singing, all of that, and now having to come back here, come down, they sold a lot of their property and such, to start over. It was really, really hard. And side note, Moira is actually my favorite character. I think to me, she just really brought life to the show. I love the way she says the word bébés. She calls her kids bébé. I think that's baby in French or something. That's the way she says it. It's so dramatic. She's a really dramatic character. But for her, the growth for Moira was basically about trying to understand what her real drive is. So Moira's personality, she is driven a lot by competition. We saw her do that a lot with Jocelyn. Whenever she would see Jocelyn running for something, even when she's not interested in whatever that thing is, she starts to pursue it. So competition was definitely a drive for her. With people that have high competition in their Gallup strengths. If you've ever taken the Gallup strength assessment at your place of work, you would know, or you would see that people that are really competitive sometimes and are really great team players, because the competition can turn them to be in opposition against their own team players as well. So learning how to be a team player was a lot of the growth for Moira. She never really readjusted to the life. She still wore her fancy clothes. She still expected fancy things, so I wouldn't call that her growth. But she learned how to get involved. So she was singing with the group and she was singing with them. She got to coordinate the drama that they were working on, the play that they acted on stage. She coordinated that, and then she ran for office in the community for a position. Although her initial motivation was to go against Jocelyn and win, when she won, she actually participated and she was really, really involved. So when you're on your way to the top, it can seem like a very, very lonely road. And sometimes people get used to being on that lonely path that they forget the importance of togetherness. So she was able to build that community spirit there in that city, and for Moira that was tremendous growth. And moving out of it by the end and going back to LA with her husband, I'm sure she would miss that so much. Now, even though I say she's my favorite character, she did have some quirks there, okay? There's no perfect human being, and she had some issues right there. So she had some traits that are kind of dysfunctional, in the sense that she didn't really believe in her kids, Now, I don't want to make it seem like she didn't think they were good enough. Maybe it's just she was scared that they would fail or something, but she didn't often give Alexis the amount of trust that a child would need to have to really, you tell your child, like, I believe in you, I think you can do that kind of encouragement. It can really give someone the boost to really start to believe in themselves, to get the job done. So for a long time, even up to season 4, when Alexis would try to do things, she would kind of dampen it down or something. So that was really something. and I felt like it kind of affected Alexa's development because she continued to feel like she was probably in the shadow of her mother, and she couldn't live up to her and fill those shoes or be as good as her and stuff. So that can kind of set up like a self-doubt. She probably also felt that she was maybe in competition with her, so that was subtly there. You have to look deeper to see it, because Moira's character is so dramatic and enchanting, you could get carried away and miss out on some of these dark traits. Something else that was there was she would often take credit for Alexis' achievements. So if Alexis is not doing something right, she'd probably say, oh no, she missed out on that gene, oh, she could have gotten it from me. And then if she does something right, she's like, oh yes, of course, it's my child, she got it from me. And then even if she wants to praise her for something, instead of saying, okay, Alexis, you did a great job, she's like, oh, so maybe there's some of me in you after all. That kind of comment, it kind of really takes away from the person. And then again, she didn't really believe in Alexis. Of course, she didn't believe as much in David. It's very clear the type of dynamics that were going on in the family, where Alexis and Johnny had a bond, and then David and the mom Moira had a bond, and nothing wrong with that, but she also didn't really believe in David as much, as I explained earlier, when she bought off his paintings whenever he had galleries, so that he wouldn't have to experience failure. The next thing I want to talk about is about relationship, and in the sense that relationship building is tough. Alright, building a relationship is not easy, and I'm just gonna cite Alexis and David, and of course Moira and Johnny as examples. So for Alexis and Ted, their story is kind of sad, because they were dating, and then she kind of took him for granted and took the relationship for granted, and left him, dated someone else, and then they got back together. And that time apart gave her the opportunity to grow. During that time apart, she got into school, she got that GED, she was in college, she was working, and it really allowed her to grow as a person. So I just want to make note on this, because a lot of times people ask me, what do you think about getting together with my ex? And it's getting together with your ex is not always a bad thing. It always depends on why you guys broke up. If there was dysfunction and there was abuse and things like that, it's tricky. But if it's a question of just immaturity, and you guys have grown and you guys have realized the lessons they were made, the lessons and the mistakes, and how you guys are coming back together stronger and better, that's a different situation. And that's what happened here. Sometimes people have to break up to get back together, and we saw that here with Alexis and Ted. Now what's really painful was that they didn't get to stay together, because he had to move away for a job in a different country, and they were doing it great for like the first 6 months. When the job became permanent and she couldn't move with him, they had to break up, and it was so painful. Lesson there really I could see was, with the way the world is right now, and a lot of people having trust issues, and it's like, is love even real after all? You start to think that all breakups and all divorces are always ugly. They're always painful, yes, but they're not always ugly if it ends on the kind of terms that Ted and Alexis ended it up on. Sometimes you can break up with someone, and it's not because they cheated on you, or they were abusive, or there was any kind of deception going on. Sometimes people move to a different state. Sometimes someone dies. Sometimes like all kinds of things happen, and you're like, you know what, your life would be a lot easier if you could just move on with someone else, but I still love you. And that's really key. And that's how I know that these two, what they really had for each other was love. It was strong, and it was really sad they didn't get to have that happy ending. But I'd say it's probably a French ending, right? Because after watching Emily in Paris, I found out that French endings, they like things to be more realistic, and in real life things are not always perfect. So for Patrick and David, their own relationship had the test where when Patrick found out that, David found out that Patrick was engaged, and they were dating when he was previously engaged to another girl, and it seemed like a crack. It was like a make or break situation, and they really handled that moment really well because they were able to identify a moment for growth. Actually, it was in this time that David was able to find out that he hadn't really discussed things about Patrick's past with him, and it was because he was scared, so he was projecting his own fears on Patrick. He didn't want to discuss his own past, so he didn't talk about Patrick's past. So it's not necessarily that Patrick, even though it seemed like an omission on his own part, he could have gone ahead and shared this information with David, even though David had not brought it up. But we could see the two of them essentially were afraid to discuss their own past, and that was something that was a step for growth. So for them to get back together, it was something they had to recognize that, okay, you know what, we need to be able to be vulnerable, we need to be able to discuss these things, these issues of fears and judgments, which is normal. As human beings, we're always going to be afraid of being judged and such, but like when you're with the one you love, and if you're going to choose to love someone, I think it makes sense for it to be a recommendation that someone I'm going to say I love, I should be able to trust them, and I should be able to feel like I can be vulnerable with them. I know that's something I've hammered on a lot on this show. So finally, Moira Rose and Johnny. I mean, of course, this whole show from season 1 to season 5 is obviously a test to their marriage. Like, how many people go through this kind of situation and stay married? I don't know if you know many. And actually come out of this situation with a stronger bond than ever and love each other even more. So I have to say, first of all, that is a test that they went through and they came out with flying colors. But then within this test, there was the issue of Moira getting her job back. So when she got this role for her to play in The Crows, Johnny was besought with loneliness because they were always together, right? And now she had to go away to film for like a month or so, and he was just here. For him, the test was really about trying to hone his own identity again, separate from Moira. Okay, I love this woman, but who am I when she's not with me? Who am I with Moira not in the picture? It seemed as though he didn't really have a life. So Johnny had, in the show, even in season 5, he's a family man, so it's just work and family. It doesn't seem like he's really done a good job cultivating his own personal, like having friends of his own. He can go and sit down and have a drink and things like that. Obviously, it doesn't replace the presence of your lover in your life, but it's something, So when she was gone, he just threw himself into work. He was so sad. He was so alone, but it was a step for him to really think about, who he is without her being there. And he supported her in this journey for her to go and do this thing. Even though he was suffering and he was alone, he supported her growth for her to do this. I just really admire the amount of support that Johnny has for his wife. It's so remarkable. I mean, I don't know if it was like this when the kids were younger and it was always like that, but whatever it is like right now, at this moment, is beautiful. Having your partner just lift you up and hold you down just like that is just, I think it's wonderful. Man or woman, either way, it's great. So those are my 3 key themes. The themes of growth, the themes of the hard work of relationships, and of course the parenting issue right there. And all in all, great show. I was especially touched by the Christmas episode where Johnny was trying to create finally this Christmas where everyone is here and present and we have love. And he had hoped that this journey they've had would create this kind of situation where they finally get to have this nice bonding Christmas. And it was a moment right there, but they came through. Everyone came through in the end, and it was lovely. They all grew. There was so much love, and the ending of the wedding of David and Patrick was especially emotional and touching. And what can I say? I definitely recommend this show if you've not seen it. So right here we have an honorable mention I thought was worth adding to the list. I know she's not part of the David Rose core family, but you might find yourself here in Stevie if you've not seen yourself in the other characters. So Stevie essentially is someone that is selling herself short. She has self-doubt, and she's put herself in a cocoon because she's afraid of her own potential. We see her grow tremendously from season 1 to season 5, and season 5 especially, where she is trying on this new job as a flight attendant, I think, and flying around the world, basically taking on that opportunity. And then of course we see her shine when Johnny Rose takes her under his wing, and they are running this business together, and they go and pitch their new business plan. Of course, she came up with the idea of this new proposal. They pitch it to investors, and she shines bright. It just goes to show you that you have the capacity and you have the potential in yourself. Even if you don't believe in yourself, sometimes you just have to try. Failure to launch syndrome can be your killer. That the only person that you're hurting is you, and sometimes you just have to go out on a limb and try. So I was really, really proud of Stevie for seeing her just grow into this more confident and self-assured type of person. So that's all I have for you, really. And I'd like to know what other lessons you guys picked up from here, or what applications you think they can have in your own life, and of course other random thoughts you might have had. And of course, please do comment and like this video, share it please, add it to a playlist. It really does help the channel, keeps me motivated. You add it to a playlist and YouTube is able to recommend it to other people. So by all means, just show us some love, okay? And I will see you in my next video. Bye.